Jesus did all those miracles to show that, hey, I'm God in the flesh. Look at me here. But I'm not there. I can't call Jesus up and say, hey, Jesus, you want to watch The Office and afterwards we could play cards? I can't get on the LG and text him and say, hey, meet me at Starbucks. It's not physically available to me. Jesus in this passage, he talks about another sign to show that he is God. The sign that'll always be with us, and that's the witness of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit, the God who you cannot see. The Holy Spirit is the sign that even though Jesus is far away, not physically present, we can know that Jesus is God. We can know that we're children of God. And we can know that in those truths, in those realities, we can rest. But we can only know it if we get out of the busyness and the overwork and the overactivity, and we stop and listen to the music. He's playing a song for you. Won't you turn to the person next to you, tell him he's playing our song. He's playing a song for you, but you have to stop and pause. I love Jason's song, pause. Put things on hold so you can experience what God is doing in your life. And what does Jesus say here? He says, if you love me, you will obey what I command. Now I look at that and I go, man, that is not an invitation to rest. When I hear somebody commanding me, I'm thinking of teachers, bosses, military officers. I'm not thinking of somebody who wants me to rest. But the truth is, when we talk about Jesus and what he commands, the main thing is love. A lot of the reason why we don't rest is because we don't really have love. When you're stuck in your own selfishness, stuck in your own agenda, stuck in your own plans, you will never be at rest. You will be trapped in anxiety, trapped in stress, because you'll be frustrated because your plans and your agenda won't go forward. It won't go forward unless you stop. Jesus says, if you love me, you will obey what I command, and I will ask the Father to give you something. I will ask the Father to give you another counselor. Another counselor. And we have to break that word down, another. Seems simple enough. Another. But what is Jesus talking about when he says another? See, there's another. We only have one word, another. That's it. But in the Greek language, there's two anothers. There's another of a different kind. Like me, I want another car. I want a different kind of car. I got babies on the way. I need like a van or an SUV or something. I want a different kind. But then there's another, which means another of the same kind. You ever bit into something and it was really good, and then the person that gave it to you says, hey, would you like another? You're not thinking, I want another of a different kind. You're thinking, I want the same stuff that I already ate on. And so he's saying, I'm going to give you a counselor, another of the same kind. The same kind as who? Jesus. You guys paid attention in Sunday school. Jesus, when he says counselor, the Jewish people back then, they were looking for the Messiah, the one who was going to right every wrong and give the land rest and bring peace. And one of the words that they used was for the Messiah was the counselor or the comforter. And so that word means one who was called alongside to aid. And it's a word that's taken from the law courts. You know how it is. You know, if you don't have an attorney, the court will appoint you one. Now, those kind of people, sometimes they're not called alongside to aid you. But anyway, a lawyer is an advocate, somebody who's called alongside to aid you in court. So it's a legal term, but it was also a military term. When the soldiers back then would get in trouble, you know, you saw Gladiator, Russell Crowe in the midst of the battle fighting. But then they would when things got too hot, there were too many enemies, they were outnumbered, they would call alongside somebody to aid them. And that's what Jesus is talking about. The Holy Spirit, in the midst of the stress, in the midst of the busyness, in the midst of everything that's going on, all the anxiety, all the failed plans, the Holy Spirit will be somebody who you can call alongside you to aid you in bringing rest. You can only do that if you stop and listen to the music. And he goes along and he describes the Holy Spirit. He describes this counselor. He says this counselor will be with you forever, no matter what you're going through. Now, sometimes you can have bad days. Anybody have some bad days? Sometimes you can have bad weeks. Anybody have some bad weeks? Sometimes you can have bad months. That's me. I'm right there with you. I'm having a bad one. And sometimes you could have bad years. I'm thinking about somewhere around like 95, 96 for me. Maybe 05, 06. That was some bad years. But he uses this term that encompasses all of those things. It says the Holy Spirit will be called alongside to aid you if you're having a bad day, a bad week, a bad month, a bad year, even a bad decade. He'll be with you forever. The Spirit of truth. He describes him as the Spirit of truth. The Holy Spirit speaks truth into our lives. The Spirit of truth. The world cannot accept him. Why? Because the world without God cannot accept truth. The reason why we get so frustrated, so tangled up in our busyness, in our anxiety, in our stress is because we're dealing in unreality. I got to do this. I got to do this. If I don't make this deadline, then I'm going to be fired. If I miss 30 seconds, if I'm late 30 seconds to work, oh. If I don't get this done for church, Ramon's going to yell at me. Well, I don't yell at people. It's an unreality. Well, I do yell at people, but for church work, I just have a tantrum by myself. I know, I'm serious. That happened this week. Anyway,